You're being very unresponsive. Be excited.
I can't wait for you to talk about sadness and depression.
Not like that. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name is Mickey. I'm a therapist and we talk about therapy things on this channel. Today, we are talking about something that's maybe not proportional with my affect right now, but I am excited to talk about it because I think this is a fun educational resource, and it's important for these things to exist on the internet because therapy and therapists have not done a very good job of being accessible to people. If you watched the anxiety versus like general worry video, today's video is going to be kind of an offshoot of that. We are talking about the difference between clinical depression and like general feelings of sadness. This is part of our like back to basics series. It's going to be a cute little playlist that we're putting together, and I'm very excited about it.
Back to basics. I like it.
And so we are talking about that today. Before we get into it, I want to be super duper clear. This video is meant to be an educational resource only. It's meant to serve for education and entertainment purposes only. This video is not meant to be a diagnostic tool. It's not meant to be a replacement for psychotherapy or clinical services. And if you are a person who feels like you will benefit from going to therapy or seeing a professional, or that you need professional help, there are always links in my description to go find that. And so I really want to encourage you to take care of yourself and to utilize the resources that are available to you if you are able to. You deserve to go get help because you're a fabulous and wonderful human being, and so like take care of yourself, okay? Because this video is not that. We're here to do broad strokes learning today, everybody.
Please take your seats.
So let's just jump right into it. I want to talk about the difference between generally feeling sad and clinical depression. For the purposes of this video, when I say the word depression, I'm referring to the clinical diagnosis. When I say the word sad or sadness, I'm referring to like general feelings of sadness. I know that people will intermingle these terms in real life. That's perfectly fine. I'm not interested in gatekeeping anyone's vocabulary, but I just wanted to separate the vocabulary for this video to make sure that I don't confuse anybody. When we talk about generally feeling sad, I think it's first and foremost very important to normalize that we as human beings will have a range of emotional responses to things, and that's very normal. We get a lot of fucked up messaging from society and like culture and media about how we're not really supposed to feel how we feel, and like a lot of encouragement to repress our emotions. And so this can cause us to feel some type of way about expressing our feelings, about having big feelings. And I want to encourage people to honor that sometimes we go through shit, you know, and like it makes us feel things. And sometimes that's like perfectly normal and like very necessary. I don't want to pathologize the normal expression of human emotion because I don't know that that's necessarily helpful to anyone. It's not to say that we should be not labeling things that are clinical depression as clinical depression, but I do want to encourage folks, again, to just honor that emotions and like feeling big things is a normal part of human life. I need water.
Another normal part of human life.
Mm-hmm. What's not normal is how little water I get out of this straw. Okay, so when we talk about what general sadness might look like, the things that came to mind for me when I was prepping for this video are like a lot of situational based things. So like if you are finding yourself crying more after you go through a breakup, or you're finding it hard to commit to going out with your friends and being your like easy breezy, happy, chipper self after you like fail a test or don't get the job that you applied for, or somebody's like real fucking mean to you. That makes sense. That might be very much reflective of a feeling of general sadness. I also want to caution folks here because I notice a lot of times that there is a tendency to label something as depression, or there can be a pressure to label something as depression if we feel like the thing that's causing us to feel sad is like stupid or like not a worthy enough thing to feel sad about. And that's not necessarily a sign that you have clinical depression. It can be, but it's not always. Sometimes we just have a hard time with stuff. And it's also like, again, very normal and very human for us to have big emotions in response to things that maybe other people might not, or someone might label as small. But that doesn't mean that you are like wrong or weird or fucked up or like necessarily have a clinical diagnosis. However, if you're noticing that the emotion is maybe out of proportion to the stimuli, then we could be potentially tiptoeing into clinical depression territory. So when we talk about clinical depression, I want to be clear, there are lots of clinical therapy depression diagnoses. For the purposes of today's video, I'm not going to go through and read you guys like the diagnostic criteria for all of them. A, because like who has the time or energy, but B, because I don't know that it's necessarily helpful for therapists to be putting out the diagnostic criteria on the internet. Friendly reminder that self-diagnosis can very much be a helpful resource, and sometimes it's the only resource that people have access to, again, because therapists in traditional therapy have done a very bad job of being accessible. However, self-diagnosis can also sometimes be dangerous, and so I really want to encourage you to utilize therapy and professionals if you have access to that, because it can be safer. It can be a safer option to have a professional do the part that is like a little bit more up to interpretation because they have the training to do that. But for the purposes of this video, like I said, there's lots of different depression diagnoses, major depressive disorder being probably the most common one that people have heard of, or MDD, but we also can be diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is the funniest acronym of all time. You can also be diagnosed with a depressive episode. There's postpartum depression. There is persistent depression or dysthymia. Bipolar disorder also has depressive episodes within it. And so there's lots of wiggle room here. And again, I think this is why it's important that we give professionals the diagnosing thing, if you're able to, because like there's a lot, but I think the thing that is one of the most important differences here between a general feeling of sadness and clinical depression is in how it's presenting on an internal level. So when we talked about general sadness before, we talked about feeling sad, feeling down, and having that kind of symptom presentation related to a specific event. Typically that's associated with thoughts and feelings about this event or this thing being sad or being frustrating or upsetting. One of the very common features with clinical depression, though, tends to be this overall feeling of general hopelessness, helplessness, feeling very down, especially about oneself. So we notice a lot of maybe not so kind things that are being either said or thought or believed about yourself, and especially this feeling of like letting people down or being not worthy, being not good enough. If these are very pervasive feelings for you, these can be great things to voice to a professional if you are feeling like that might be indicative of a depressive or clinical depression diagnosis. We also tend to see pretty commonly with clinical depression changes to your typical self. This can be pronounced changes in your mood where you're noticing that just generally you are less happy than you were, or you find it harder to be happy about things that used to make you happy, and not in a situational way, not about specific events, but just generally across the board you find it harder to be happy, or you're feeling more down overall. But this can also look like changes to your daily functionality. So changes to your appetite, changes to your sleep patterns, changes in your hygiene. These are all things that therapists will look for when we are thinking about making a clinical depression diagnosis, because this lets us know that there has been a significant change to the way that a person's mood is affecting their life, and that's where we start to tiptoe into like the clinical territory. The verbiage that the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, uses is clinically significant, and so that is the thing that makes the difference between feeling generally sad and having a clinical depression diagnosis. And so if you're noticing these things, I want to encourage you to voice them to a professional, because that's all super valuable information for someone to have when we're talking about figuring out what exactly is going on, what the diagnosis might be. I think this is a great opportunity to talk about something called the PHQ-9, which is a screening tool that therapists will commonly use to screen for depression, but it is also commonly used by primary care physicians. You've probably filled this out at your doctor's office without realizing it. This is the one where they ask you questions about whether you have experienced SI, and this tends to be the like most common diagnostic tool. Again, I want to caution people again, just looking up the screening tools on the internet. They can be a great resource and they're very helpful when they're used in a safe way, but again, I want to honor that self-diagnosis is sometimes the only resource that people have, but I want to also encourage the folks that do have access to therapy to leave that diagnostic and screening tool in the hands of professionals, because there's a lot of nuance there and there's like specific training about how to use it. The screening tool asks you questions, like I mentioned, about changes in appetite, changes in sleep pattern, but it also screens for excessive feelings of hopelessness, feeling down, having little interest or lack of joy in doing things. And then, of course, it asks you the big question about feelings that you might be better off dead or that people would be better off without you. I want to pause here to encourage anyone who is experiencing these types of thoughts or feelings, even if they are infrequent, even if you are feeling like you're not going to act on them, this is very much cause for speaking to a professional, and I really want to encourage you to utilize the links in the description. This is a very important thing to point out here, because when we see these types of feelings and thoughts coming up, it's usually a sign that there is something deeper underlying going on, and it's very important that you get the help that you deserve, because like A, you deserve that, but B, it's a safety thing and it's very, very important. So I really want to encourage anyone, if you're in this territory of like, I don't know, maybe I have clinical depression, and you have these types of thoughts, very much I want to encourage you to contact a professional. Again, links in description. One of the other things that's important for us to talk about here when in this gray area of like, am I sad, am I depressed, is about the coping skills. We talked about this in the anxiety video, but I think this is a really useful reflection question to have, because if you are able to practice some type of coping and then notice an increase or an improvement in your mood after doing that, that's usually a great sign that we're coping effectively and that we are dealing with our emotions, we're processing, we're letting go. That's a sign of like healthy emotional processing, like digital high five, good for you.
High five.
If you are noticing that the coping skills are maybe not as helpful for you, or they were helpful at one time and they are no longer helpful to you, this again can be a great thing to voice to a professional, because that's a sign for us that something has changed. There's like something afoot and it's worth doing further investigating about. Parents or loved ones, people that are close and safe and trusted when you are in this place of like, am I sad, am I depressed? Because these can also be great things to unpack again with a safe and trusted person, because if we are feeling some type of way about contacting a therapist, it can be great to have support from our loved ones when we are in this space. And so if you are noticing these things, I want to encourage you to voice them to these safe and trusted people, and create some space and some dialogue around what's going on for you, because sometimes we also discover more feelings when we voice it out loud, and so that can be a great resource for you too. As a general rule, if you're able to go to therapy, I really want to encourage folks to utilize the resource, because I talked about this in the anxiety video, but again, I want to be super clear. It is very much okay to go to therapy or to contact a therapist for the purpose of figuring out what's going on for you. I am very frustrated by this rhetoric that you have to be sick enough to go to therapy, or that your symptoms are not severe enough, or that you're like taking a seat from someone else. That's not true. There are lots of wonderful therapists who are happy to work with clients who have a varying range of issues at a varying level of intensities. And so there is very much a seat at the table for you if you want it. And I want to encourage folks to stop like gatekeeping therapy, because it's not helpful to anyone. Also, friendly reminder that going to therapy doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck in therapy for the rest of your life. It's very much possible to go for a short time, work on some shit, and then get the fuck out of there. Therapy doesn't have to be a life sentence, and it certainly doesn't have to be something that you're involved with for like oodles and oodles of time. You can go and work on some stuff and then experience positive changes in your life and like run off into the sunset and live your best life. So again, I want to encourage people to utilize the links in the description if you need or want them. I hope that this was helpful to you guys, or useful or interesting. If you guys found it helpful or useful or interesting, like the video and let me know what your guys' thoughts and feelings are in the comments. Also, just like the video because it's helpful to the channel. Thanks. Subscribe to the channel and click the little notification bell, because we upload every Saturday at 10 a.m. and I would love to have you here. I tend to be responding and hearting comments in the first hour, and so I would love to like get to chat with you if you want to stick around, and then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow, and I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.